But
Now, Joe, I want to talk to you about your language. Why the fuck do you swear so much?
I don't know.
Have you read anything about the science of swearing?
No.
Do you know that there is a science of swearing?
A science?
Yes, it's pretty interesting stuff.
Oh.
So the part of your brain that produces swear words is not the part of the brain that manages ordinary language.
Oh.
Really interesting. We have two language centers in our left frontal cortex. People that have strokes that damage them often lose language completely, but they can still swear.
Oh.
So swearing is coming from somewhere else. It may be coming from the right hemisphere, but it's also coming from deeper centers in the brain that connect to the limbic system and the amygdala, and that connects to the involuntary nervous system. So here's a couple interesting facts.
Okay.
Swearing is associated with sweating, increased sweating. So you should be dripping with sweat.
I haven't swear that much. I'm a comedian. I'm sure it's uncomfortable
secondly,
for you.
also interesting, swearing increases pain tolerance. And there's an interesting experiment. The standard way they do pain tolerance, they have people stick their hand in a bucket of ice and water, and you see how long they can keep it there. The people who say, fuck, shit, can keep it there much longer than people who are not allowed to swear.
What about noises? What if they just go, ah?
No, it was swearing specifically.
So they've tried noises and swearing?
Yeah,
and
so it
swearing
may
one?
be, when you, if you're hammering a nail and hit your thumb,
Yeah.
you use one of those words, that's a good strategy.
That's interesting because I almost always do that. If I hurt something, especially a finger, like I slammed a finger in a car door the other day and I went, motherfucker. So that's what that is?
But and it's interesting. It's coming, there's a different part of the brain that manages that. It has different emotional content.
Yeah, it flavors language.
Yes.
I like them. I'm a big fan of the swears.
I'll leave you some papers about the science of swearing.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Now, what would happen if they were no longer taboo? Would the same
They'd lose
areas,
their power. I think they'd lose their power. Right.
The same areas of the brain wouldn't.
No.
I remember there was an episode of, I don't remember what television show, but it was on CBS.
Yeah.
And they had a line at the end of the show, and essentially they were saying, shit happens. And it was a big deal.
I'll bet.
It was a big deal that they wanted to be able to say shit happens. And apparently they pulled this off and they got it through, and it was like a 10 p.m. show, so it was okay. And it was 11 o'clock by the time they said shit. And I remember thinking, like, wow, what a strange sort of, like, how many people were involved in this sort of dance? Like, how many lawyers and executives and who, like, it's very strange.
Very strange.
That this one word would, everybody knows the word.
Right.
It's not even that
So it's
offensive.
kind of a kind of game we all play,
Yes,
right?
yes. So, but you're saying this game is facilitated by one specific part of the brain, and is that because, like,
I don't
swear
know.
words are taboo words,
They're
right?
taboo words and often associated with things that we find offensive or with bodily acts that freak people out.
Yeah.
So there's both there's a psychological, social aspect to it, but there's also a neurological aspect to it.
Now, when the words, like some words for some people, like I remember when I was a kid, I lived in Florida for a little bit, and I said hell once. And in Florida in the 1970s, hell was a swear. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I came from New Jersey, and then I was in San Francisco, and then also I was in Florida, and I said hell. And they're like, don't swear like that in this class. I was like, swear? What the fuck are you people talking about? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. And then I was like, you guys have different swears.
Yeah.
Now, if you had a word that was not taboo to you, would that same area of your brain be?
I don't know. There has not been a lot of research. It hasn't been taken seriously, but that's all interesting questions that should be studied.
Because if you're a really super conservative person, there's a lot of words that are off the table.
Yeah.
But if you are a far more, just loose with your language, you could shit this and this, God damn it. That would be nothing. Like, God damn it would be just like, shucks.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But to someone, God damn it would be like a really big deal.
Yeah,
really big deal. So, like, what it would be, different parts of the brain would be activated by that versus if you said it, it would be not that big a deal. But if someone was like super conservative and they said
probably even more.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Interesting.
What do you think that is a universal thing? I mean, it obviously
seems to be. It seems to be universal.
Right?
Seems to be universal. Yeah. Another finding that I came across is that people who learn a second language, that swearing in the second language does not have the same emotional impact that your first language does.
Oh, that makes sense. That's why they're so fun when you learn Spanish swears.
Right.
It's like you get a free ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, and you can do them on television too, right? You can say a lot of Spanish swears on English-speaking TV, and everybody just pleads ignorance. Does every language have?
Yes.
They all have swears.
Yeah. Every language has taboo words, swear words.
Wow.
Yeah, it's universal.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
Asian languages, European languages, all of them, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Huh. So that would, at least to my brain, seem to indicate that there's like some use for that.
Yes. Well, there are probably many uses. One is this thing of modulating pain. One is a social bonding, forming some community.
Yeah, that's how I kind of use it.
Yeah,
I think when I swear in front of people, I'm chesting them out.
Yeah.
Like, you freaking out if I say fuck? Because if you are, I can't talk to you.
Right.
Like, you're too much work.
Right.
You know? You know what I mean? Like,
I know exactly what
if you're talking to someone and every other word, like, well, I really wish you wouldn't use that language. Well, okay. There's so much work to do here.
I know exactly.
Can't hold your hand, dance through this garden.
Right.
Yeah. It's to me also, like, I hang around with a lot of people that swear a lot because I hang around with professional comedians and fighters, and there's a lot of swashbuckling, freewheeling type of individuals involved in those pursuits. And
now there's some study suggesting that swearing is becoming more frequent in our society.
Do you think
and
because
more
of the
public.
internet?
I don't know. It's a trend. I'm not sure anybody knows why. But I mean, nobody would have been, on the air like you are 20 years ago.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, that is specifically because of the internet, because of a lack of regulation.
Yeah.
But even that, it's like it's resisted in a lot of ways. Like, people are trying to figure out how to modulate this and how to handle it. And
they'll never handle it.
No, it seems like the genie's out of the bottle, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think ultimately you find what you enjoy, and the best way to find what you enjoy is people actually doing what they want to do, and then you figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that seems to be what's happening in the world of the internet and podcasting and stuff like that. It's also the access, right? Like, a person like you could just put together a podcast, and if people find it interesting, if it resonates, you could get 100,000 downloads out of nowhere. Like, 100,000. If you have a radio show, 100,000 people listening, that's a lot of damn people.
Yeah.
Like, they'd be excited.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, Andrew, we got the monthlies in, and you're doing great. You got 100,000 people a day. They'd be like, holy shit, this is a successful business. But you could be doing that just from your office. Just put together with a laptop and a microphone and no distribution whatsoever in terms of, like, no string of executives and gigantic corporation behind you. You don't have all that.
And nobody telling you what you can say and can't say.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing you get out of today that you never got out of before. And, I've been involved in show business for many years, but only this kind of stuff for 9 from doing this podcast. And what I've seen with this is, like, what's unusual, and I think what resonates with people is that there isn't anybody else. There's no group of people that's saying, Andrew, could you stop saying this? Or let's concentrate on that. And the polls are showing that people like this, and you have breaks in between while the commercials are playing. They come to you with notes and they tell you things. All that stuff just seems to somehow or another ruin this natural interaction that we have with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, for a guy like you, the internet is, I would think that with some of your more controversial ideas, like, this is the way you could really air them out in long form. Because if you, like, a lot of doctors, they don't want to open their mind to anything outside of what they're practicing.
I've noticed.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be rough for you, right?
But I've never censored what I say. I've always put it all out there.
Good for you.
Yeah. I've done that all my life.
But don't you find that it's more... Not just accepted, but people are more interested in it now because of the internet.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I've heard about you for many, many years, but it's sort of ramped up over the last, decade or so.
Right.
Yeah, because of the internet.
Right.
Because people have this.
But, I've been around. It's funny when I look at this stuff like, all the stuff about pot and psychedelics, placebos. I was saying this stuff in the 1970s. My first book, The Natural Mind, was published in 1972. It argued that everybody has an innate drive to alter their consciousness.
Yeah.
And that, drugs are one way of doing it. I did the first human experiments with pot that were ever done with under double-blind conditions.
What experiments did you do?
I gave marijuana to people in a laboratory in 1968.
And what'd you test them for?
Well, we were just seeing people bet me you couldn't do it. Nobody had ever done this. All this marijuana was becoming such a big thing, and there were no experiments.
Like what kind of experiments?
I took the most basic stuff. I just wanted to show that you could give it to human subjects in a lab and get away with it because people thought you couldn't. You mean
in terms of the FTC?
In terms of law, lawsuits, everything.
Okay.
One of the things I wanted to give it to people that never had it before, so there'd be no expectations. Everyone said, this is terrible. They're going to turn into heroin addicts from giving them stuff like that. Anyway, I just wanted to see basic stuff like, does it dilate the pupils of the eyes? Because cops were busting people. They'd say their eyes are dilated.
Yeah.
Must be high on marijuana. And they'd search. But marijuana doesn't, we showed, doesn't dilate the pupils of the eyes. I tested blood sugar because people said the reason people get hungry is because blood sugar drops has no effect on blood sugar. We showed that, people who had never had marijuana before in a lab, you could show slight decreases in performance and motor function and cognitive function. But people who were regular users of it, you couldn't show that they had adapted to it.
Yeah, my take on that is that I think the people that are not regular users are freaking out.
Yeah.
And because they're nervous.
It's novel sensations and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and they just don't know how to relax.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big one to me with physical movement because they want to, test drivers and all sorts of other things.